Hello, this is Binam Bajracharya from the Center for Translational Data Science at the University of Chicago. Welcome to the NCI CRDC Tech Talk on the GA4GH Data Repository Service Standard. Global Alliance for Genomic Health, or GA4GH for short, is a global standard we've adopted at Gen3 that helps us interoperate across other platforms, APIs, and compute platforms that work with genomic and scientific data. In this talk, I'll be going through a quick introduction to DIRS, Gen 3 implementation of DIRS, updates on GA4GH DIRS, and upcoming updates to the Gen 3 implementation of DIRS. A quick crash course on what Data Repository Service, or DIRS, is. The problem is that there's a large amount of data available, and there are multiple methods to access these data. There's no guarantee that any given access method will work on any given data. DIRS is a standard set by GA4GH that allows researchers to discover and access data in a consistent way. Some background on our own architecture. IndexD is a service available in Gen 3 that is responsible for indexing data using globally unique identifiers. This is achieved by issuing a single GUID to an individual data located in the cloud. These GUIDs have two components to them. The prefix, which is the TG.4503 shown in the example, is an opaque identifier that stays consistent throughout the particular server where the data repository is hosted. The prefix can be resolved using any resolvers like dataguid.org. The second part is the unique identifier that is unique to one particular file. Gen3 IndexD also supports aliases. These are user-defined unique identifiers that maps on to the GUIDs. We have three DIRS endpoints implemented in Gen 3. DIRS is built on top of the previously mentioned indexing service. First is the get objects with the object ID, which is the GUID, returns a DIRS object metadata. The second endpoint is the object access endpoint, where you provide the object ID and the access ID, which is the access method used to download the bytes from. In Gen 3, the methods currently supported are AWS S3, Google Storage, Microsoft Azure, and HTTP. Gen 3 returns a pre-signed URL which can be used to download the bytes. Here are some examples of the JSON responses for these as endpoints. On the left, we have the response from the object endpoint, which includes information like DIRS object ID, file name, access methods, cloud locations, and many more. On the right, we have a response from the access endpoint, which returns the pre-signed URL for the file to download the object bytes. We also have a service info endpoint. This endpoint returns information about the DIRS server. This is an example of what gets returned for the NCI CRDC DIRS server. Moving on to what's going on with DIRS now, the team here at Gen 3 has been involved in conversations regarding the DIRS standard in GA4GH, and here are a couple of current conversations going on in the community that will impact the DIRS standard in the coming future. For more information about these pull requests, please join us in the conversations at the GA4GH Cloud workstream. The first PR includes the stats endpoint in the standard. This will return information about the number of files and total file size of a DIRS server. This helps us keep track of growth of a DIRS server over time. Cloud storage indication. As data repositories grow larger in the scale of petabytes, the data repositories are starting to consider storage costs. Storing large amounts of data that is not frequently accessed in cold storage cuts down the cost by a lot. Phase 1 of this conversation will try to answer the question, how do we let users know whether the data is immediately available or needs time to thaw? Phase 2 will provide more details on storage and thawing process itself. The third PR has to do with location constraints. This will be an optional field that communicates to the user how the data owner intends the data to be used. Options like whether the data should be used exclusively on the cloud, exclusively on a specified cloud provider, or a cloud region This helps strengthen data governance and compliance for data in cloud-based environments. The fourth PR has to do with metadata linking. For some DIRS objects, it may be necessary to have some additional metadata associated to make the object fair. To do this, we'll be adding a best practice to the DIRS spec. We would also like to talk about some upcoming DIRS standards that will be implemented in the Gen 3. First of these is the options endpoint. Some data requires specific permissions set by data access committees to access. The options endpoint is a new endpoint that will give users the authorization information needed to access a DIRS object. The main flow is to be used in conjunction with the bulk endpoint to get the necessary authorization information for the many objects that you need to download. Which brings us to the bulk requests. Bulk requests will return multiple DIRS objects responses from a single call. This will also include returning pre-signed URLs for the downloading multiple DIRS objects. These are all the things coming soon to the Gen 3 DIRS server.